want you to leave. We're educated about our school budget. We hope that you, but really the purpose of tonight is to be fully transparent in terms of the creation of the school budget, what it means, some of the vocabulary that we use day to day in education that our community may not know. However, it does impact our community when we talk about school budget, when we talk about taxes. So the goal of this evening is really to educate everyone, answer questions. We do ask that we get through a few of the slides, and if you can jot down some questions, I put some post-its and pencils on there, and if we need to go back to any particular slides to provide clarification or questions, then we can share it at that time. First, I'm going to have my team over here just stand up because they are part of central office, and they will play a big role in terms of creating the school budget along with our school principals. Mr. Wells is back there, Mr. Aronowitz is back there, and Mr. Abrams is somewhere. Ms. Case and I will be presenting this evening. Ms. Case is our business administrator, Mr. Lehman is our assistant superintendent, and Dr. Wells is the director of personnel. I hate the Okay, so first, we just wanted to get started. In terms of school budget, it is all connected to our district goals. So we are still we created a 5-year strategic plan. Our strategic goals are student success, SEL, mental health, wellness, community engagement and communications, facilities and finance, and diversity, equity, and inclusivity. So our strategic plan actually was finalized right around COVID. So a lot of the goals are related to that time, and then we've been updating our strategic plan to ensure that we're adhering and addressing the needs to the now for our students right now. In terms of the budget, our goals are to commitment to fiscal responsibility and providing a high quality education for all students. Continue to improve and strengthen instructional programs, professional development, education offerings for our students, particularly in the areas of math and literacy, and in curriculum alignment through transition years, and continuously support and grow counseling services. We'll talk a little bit about that as well, and continue to support and strengthen programs for special education and student services.
Good evening. So as we talk, we're going to discuss what is a school budget. A school budget at its core is our priorities for our students that were just reflected in the first slide, and that it should be centered on our children and their aspirations for their future. While we love that, we know that in practice, it's largely driven by financial considerations and budget constraints. And so with that, our school operates on a July through June calendar, so what is known as a fiscal calendar, and that at the end of the day, in order for the state to approve our budget, it has to have two key rules. Our tax revenues have to remain within the cap or within cap allowances. So some of the cap allowances that a district can have, there are 4 cap allowances that a district can have. The first one is a healthcare waiver, so that's any time that you hear, for multiple times for multiple years, that a lot of the healthcare is within over 15%. We have to wonder what happens with the state budget. They have taken out surplus out of their own in order to help that. But with that, ours, we have utilized that waiver. Along with the second one is an enrollment waiver. We have not utilized that waiver. The third one is a send to receive relationship because we are pre-K-12 and do not qualify for that. And last but not least, there is a ship to, and that was when the state was going through a reform for pension. We do not qualify, but there are some states that are still paying back to the state, and so they will qualify for that. And then, so total revenues must balance with expenditures. So what are the things that we utilize to start the budget process? We utilize planning tools, we consider contingencies, manage the risk, be fiscally responsible, reflect our values, and then we need to consider safeguards and factoring for our future.
So our job is to make sure that the budget is developed to ensure thorough and efficient education. So how we do that is we, again, go back to our strategic plan and goals. We look at our district and school-wide goals for each of the 7 buildings. Program needs, how it relates to compliance and regulation. Anything that's mandated, we must ensure that we do, that we are completing that. Any mandates, we need to make sure we're adhering to, extracurricular activities, and staffing. This was our budget timeline, so while we get to do our budget hearing just one time a year, and that's between April and May, the budget is actually developed throughout the entire school year. So we felt that it was important for the public to know that the timeline actually starts really early on. In the fall, once we started school, once school was open, kids are in school, we actually started meeting with our principals and our directors to start to work on this school year's budget. So we get a lot of questions about enrollment, right? So this slide particularly, we pulled the data that shows the trends from 2015 to 2025. So if you look, sorry, this clicker doesn't have the right one. But if you look at 2015, we're at 3,720 students, district-wide. 24, 25, we're at now currently 3,909 students. You see, each year it is fluctuating, but like last year we had 4,003 students. We calculated students that moved away, maybe to a neighboring town. Our graduating class, we had a huge graduating class last year, so they exit, so it does fluctuate. But right now you can see through at least through the last 3 years, since 2023, we've kind of maintained a little above 300. So what's important to notice too is that while enrollment is increasing and it's fluctuating, our special ed population is not. Our special ed population is increasing. So over the last 10 years, our special ed population has increased 260 students. That is significant when it comes to budgeting. We are all about least restrictive, having our students stay in our community. But there are costs for students that do need specialized programming that are outside of the 7 buildings. And sometimes that cost is driving $3.5 million in our school budget. So and I just want to point out that it's from 2015 to where we are today, 764 students are receiving special education related services, which, if we think about it though, I see it as a positive. I know it impacts the budget, but at the same time, you have families that are moving here that know that we are providing a thorough and efficient education. We're addressing all of the needs of our students. So that's the other piece too. So students, parents are moving in. The other piece, a big question that everyone is asking, how is housing, the new housing, impacting enrollment? Is it impacting? Yes. I'll take Glassworks for example. We were able to pull some data, and we have 120 students from Glassworks alone that are attending our public school. Glassworks. Okay. So we recently I literally received a report on Friday. Our demographer, if you attended any of our board meetings, the Board of Education was in support of doing a demography study from Rutgers, and we recently received that report. In that report, I didn't read through the whole entire thing, I didn't have time, but in that report, and I want to highlight, and I also want to share, make sure the board has an opportunity to review it too before we go public with the report. But a few things that I learned from the report: 16 total population in both towns. You had an increase of 16.9 in your population percent. So thank you. Which is significant. In the report, we'll be able to share out that how, in terms of what we're going to look like by 2030. Quick review is that our schools will be impacted by the new developments.
You just in Glassworks, Ms. Perez, that the special needs?
So out of the 120 students that are currently attending our schools, 40 students are special education. And we have quite a few that are being transported to our schools from that area too. So over 90 students.
And the study for the tomographer was actually done by Citygate, just so that everybody has come out and done.
So the purpose of this slide, though, why we did want to pull the special ed population is because that percentage is growing at a faster rate than even our enrollment. So it's it's grown 6% over the last few years. So we get a lot of questions about staffing. If we're at ratio, below ratio, what do our student class sizes look like? This slide here indicates, has all of our students in each of the buildings. It's demonstrating the ratio teacher to student ratio. We're at 1 teacher to 11 students. That's in line with the county average. And then for administration, it's 1 administrator to just about 200 to 300 students. That ratio is a little off. We are above the ratio. We have less administrators. The county average is 1 administrator to about 117 students. In the county, that's not the state, that's the county.
It's really hard to see. I did go to the projector, but this is the projector is from the board, like we moved it up, because it gets I don't know if you know. Yeah, I can do it.
Something like this. So if I hand you something.
We're not going to put GR. We'll have it listed on our website.
You got this? You got this? Hey.
So we'll just talk about a couple of budgetary challenges. We know substitute rates. We have tried to fill over 4,600 absences. Our fill rate with the company that we utilize is about 58%, actually higher than the other school districts that they're utilizing. It's very hard to find substitutes. And with that, we projected $3.5 million in substitute coverage. And that is up from this year currently of 3.3. And then custodial coverage, we do outsource. Our maintenance is in-house, but our custodial coverage is outsourced, and that's $3.1 million. That did go out for a request for proposal and will be in our 5th of 5 years for that. So for the 26-27 school year, we will have to go out for a new bid. For healthcare costs, next year we are projected at $17.6 million, so a little over 18% of our budget for healthcare. And with that, again, we talked about double digits rising over the last 3 to 5 years. Some significant changes with that as well is there's a cost called Chapter 44 that employees versus employers have to pay into. That completely changed what goes on. It used to be prior to that something called Chapter 78, and Chapter 78 was a percentage of salary versus a percentage of the healthcare premium. That is still in play if those people have been grandfathered into that program. However, Chapter 44 took over in 2018, and that is actually a cost per percentage off the salary. And so what happens with that is a employee can be capped and pay for health benefits. So if health benefits cost $15,000, they can be capped at $9,000. We have to pay the difference, and in future years, when that goes up 15%, the district is taking on 100% of that cost. So it's a huge increase to the district budget versus what it used to be. So a lot of towns or a lot of districts would talk about breakage, and that breakage would come from salary or come from benefits when someone may retire and someone new may come on. However, that breakage has become less and less as time has gone on and health benefits have risen into the double digits. And then for special education, for out-of-district placement, we have $3.5 million that is spent for our students to go out of district for students that we cannot cover in district. The difference for that is those schools do not have to have a 2% cap, and we've seen double digits. A lot of times we'll get letters for it. What'll happen from those schools is they can actually come back after their budget has been approved by the state, that they can come back 2 to 3 years after to ask us for whatever the differential is. So a lot of times you'll see that we have to approve a cost that's after the fact, yet we don't have that ability to do so. And they have the ability to then also increase costs for the next year at any cost that they deem necessary to run their program in that school. So a lot of times you might receive a letter that says, please ensure to project over 10% for next year. Yet we are still kept to the 2% cap.
This case, I'm sorry, or Ms. President, can you just explain a little bit about what happens with the substitutes? So those are all buildings, all kinds of classes. So for example, if it's a chemistry teacher, they're not getting really chemistry instruction, they're getting a lesson, that was left by the teacher maybe. What about if it's, and does that include just teachers, does it include staff, anybody else in that number? And then is there any additional cost for like backfilling?
So any staff member under the, our teacher association contract, so that would be clerical, instructional assistants, teaching staff, nurses, plus aides.
That would also cover, say, if the company that we utilize cannot support that coverage, we're very blessed that a lot of our teachers will come and have class coverage, and they'll take, their time out of their lunch or out of their prep period, and then obviously there's a voucher for that, so that cost is covered within there, and we're grateful that they're giving us the time to do so.
So if a teacher, if you can't get a sub, and a teacher goes in, what is your sub rate again? 118. If you can't get a sub, and a teacher has to cover, what do you pay for them to cover that class?
It's in their contract.
Yeah, what it work out, whatever their salary.
45 or 90.
So if you don't get subs, then you're actually probably paying more to have teachers cover for the face of their salary, correct? Secondly, what do you pay the company that fills the subs? So if I keep with the sub, I have to go through that website, right? And I get paid 120. What would you pay them if I get paid 100? So they make out every day, they get that $38 on top of the 120.
So we have to go, so what happens is, because of the amount of cost we spend for this program, for the cost of what we pay for substitutes, we actually had to go out for a competitive bid. That requires us to put the bid package together. It has to get approved by the state. And then we have to then go ahead, go out to bid. Companies come bid on what they believe their services cost. A matrix gets filled out, and then we have that contract for either 1 or 2 years. This particular instance, the last one was done, it was for 2 years.
Could you not just go directly and hire a sub for $140 if your rate's low, because some schools are paying 100, some schools are paying 150. Since you're paying $38 and the subs get 120, could you not raise that up a little bit so you get more subs in? Your school is more attractive, you save the $38 that you pay this company. Also, if you get more subs in, then you're paying less for teacher coverage, like the teacher's salary, something gets 100,000, they're gonna get all this.
So I wasn't here.
So you get a sub, just say, I come in, and you pay me 120, you're paying them $38, and say another teacher's out, so you have to, and you don't have another sub, so you have to go to the chemistry teacher or the math teacher, and you're paying them their hourly salary, which is like $90, or depending on them, if they're, the step they're in their salary. Isn't there another way to maybe make it where you pay the subs more more, but then you save on this company and you save for the teacher's coverage. You said like, how many teachers were out, you had that sounds. I mean, that's some money, that's some savings. Do you ever think of that?
We could go back and run the cost analysis on it. However, why some districts are able to versus why some districts aren't is potentially what your staffing is in your personnel department. And we would have to hire more to be able to organize some coverage, the programming, everything behind it. I don't know when the change happened that we outsourced, but that's
Or maybe we
why.
get an internal person just to handle it at a cheaper salary, because, you know, you got a lot of people here that, you know, they have their sick days, they have their personal, they have their family illness. That might be a little cost saving, I would say, in that area. And then the second thing is, when is the teacher's contracts up, the renewal? It was just done? What is, okay. So what is the average percentage raises did you give to the faculty, to the teachers, not the administrators? What percentage?
3.75.
3.7, and the administrators, are they getting around that range or higher? Less, what about the aides? Do you have
The
aides?
aides, the
They're all done
paraprofessionals
together?
are all together.
So you're about 3.7.
And Monmouth County average at the time was 3.77.
If you could just jot down your questions, so then this way we can flow through the slides, and then we can address any questions at the end, because then this way it'll kind of flow a little better. Thank you.
So let's talk about the school budget. This is kind of just going to be the flow of slides for the remainder of tonight. How are we funded? Where does the sourcing of fundings come from? What does adequacy mean? Under adequacy, spending cap, reserve cap, tax levy, what's the tax incentive program, and then, what is our district revenue stream? So with that, where does our money come from? Our biggest chunk comes from local property taxes, and that's 70.4% of your budget. The next category is state aid. State aid is broken down into different pockets of money and different categories. So what we receive is equalization aid, special education aid, transportation aid, security, and technology. And this is the first year after the 7-year reform that the state had that they did some changes. Some of those significant changes are that they went from looking at a 1-year look back for equalization to a 3-year average. And then they did the same thing for district income. So those things increased what they believe our towns are able to pay, which reduced our equalization aid by about $3.7 million. And then for special ed categorical aid, the biggest change there was that instead of using census data, they actually went off of what we call is our application for state aid, and that always happens around the October 15th snapshot date. And so they actually took what we said was currently enrollment in our district and gave us money based on that. So we had an increase of a little over 2.5 million in that category. So with that, the next part of our funding sources come from federal funds. Well, state aid, just so you know, the total state aid for our district is 25.1%. For federal funding, those are things like Title I, IDEA, and before this, COVID funding. So every year we utilize those. So for IDEA, that's for our individual disability education application. Thank you.
Special education.
And so with that, we try to keep our risk low. So when we utilize those fundings, we utilize it to offset our out-of-district costs for our special ed kids that go out of district. Next year, we're projecting that to be $712,000. And the reason why is because the state normally tells us that we have to budget at 85% of whatever our grants are. This year, they let us know that we cannot go over 75%. So we are seeing a decrease as we budget for next year. And then same thing for our title grants. We receive Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV. And each one of those has a different category. So Title I is used for targeted assistance for any of our low income areas. And then Title II is usually for our professional development, and Title III is for immigrant, and Title IV is for what the state considers well-rounded. So with that, next year, that would make up 1.3% of our total district budget. And with that, the problem is, we've seen that, just in the past couple of days, they pulled back over $85 million from 20 districts. So what will that look like for our future, and how will we be able to fund that if they don't come to fruition with that? And there's a lot of regs that are coming out saying what we do or do not have to do, and that can also be based off of what the state does. So we'll be paying close attention to that, but currently, what we have now has been projected through September 2025. Also, one of the biggest changes for us was SEMI, or what they call Medicaid reimbursement, and that is required, again, by federal and by state. So last year when we built our budget, they were requiring that we had a minimum of 100. Just go back a slide. Last year when they did that, they told us we had to project our revenue source for that at $190,000. And so we did, and mid-year, they decided that they're only going to pay us nickels on every session. So we are seeing a reduction in that. So next year, when we're looking at the 25-26 budget, they told us to project $23,000. So that is an area that we have to make up revenue in, just to keep our district balance budgeted. And then last but not least, we also utilize other revenues throughout the district. Those things would be tuition from out-of-district students. So if we're receiving students from another town, we're taking them in and they may be helping us. We're charging that district revenue and they're paying us. The next thing that we do is we have interest income. So we try to utilize any money that we're not currently spending for something into a high interest bearing account so that we can replenish and make money on the money that we're not yet utilizing. And then we also utilize facility rentals. We went and did the board was able to reapprove the new policy so that our categories changed from 5 categories to 4 so that we could change percentages of rates, especially since our facilities are utilized a lot. We want to ensure that we're receiving funding back so we can push that back into our facilities. And then we also utilize shared services that we'll touch upon in a little bit. And then last but not least, we'll talk about fund balance and surplus and what that means. So with all those 4 wrapped up, that's 4.5% of our budget. So when we go to the next slide, what does fund balance mean? Fund balance is like having a savings account. Sure. K through 12, if we have them, we have to put them on our budget. So if ever we're to receive a grant or a donation, usually it's a direct source, right? So if there's a reason or a cause, and then we can only utilize it for that. We do utilize those and we do apply for them. One of the things that we applied for recently from the state was preschool expansion for the facilities, and we were able to secure $1.73 million. So anytime we can take it, we also have teachers that write grants for Chick-fil-A, sometimes we have Walmart grants, and very specific direct causes. We could potentially, typically they've gone to student activities for a very specific cause that's outside the operational budget. So fund balance. Fund balance goes into what our operation cost is. So when you're budgeting, if you have $100 and at the end of the year you have 10, that's your fund balance. That fund balance is able to be used like a savings account, and in essence, it's able to help offset the next year's budget as well as potentially go into what are called reserve accounts. And so let's just go over the 3 reserve accounts that our district has. So the first one is capital reserve, and anytime money comes out of a reserve account, it's at no tax impact. So capital reserve accounts have been utilized for facility projects, like when we did at the high school, the turf field and the track, or sometimes HVAC projects, or we're definitely going to need roof replacement in our future. So the next that we have is maintenance reserve, And this district has utilized maintenance reserve withdrawal to balance our budget for many, many years. With that, we utilize it for repairs. It cannot be utilized towards salaries. It has to be utilized towards one-time costs. And then last but not least, there's emergency reserve. It is the most difficult to withdraw money from. It also needs, it's also really supposed to be for unanticipated general costs. And with those unanticipated general costs, you have to get approval by the state to utilize that funding.
So in this case, so you call it a savings account, but I think what I'm hearing is like a savings account for a household, you would draw it to balance your checkbook, say, but and hoping to be able to put that back, that savings back, when you have the money back. But I'm assuming that for a school district, you're not getting more money, you're getting less money, so it's harder to put, you to replace that savings account fund, right? It's being depleted, it's not being replenished.
Right. So we get audited every single year, and one of the main things that we've been told by our auditor every single year since I've come here is that we do not surplus enough money. We should surplus at least 2%, really 2 to 5%. We surplus under 1. So it's very challenging to utilize that money to either put into a savings account or replenish the money that we've been taking out of these maintenance reserve accounts. And so that will play into future budget impact.
So our next slide is really, we know that when we send out information to our community, like I mentioned earlier, that we use under advocacy, spending caps, and some terminology that may not be familiar with everyone. So I'm going to have Ms. Case share exactly what that means. And again, if there's questions, then just please jot them down so we can further clarify.
So the state did some rate funding formula in 2010, and with that, it was decided that school budgets could not go over 2% or 2%, and those 4 cap allowances that we talked about earlier. And with that, part of the calculation that the state utilizes is what's called an adequacy budget. That adequacy budget they determine is a weighted average for our enrollment that you saw on the chart prior. And the weighted enrollment is least for kindergarten and then highest for high school students. And so they use that so that they can decide whether a district is over adequacy or under adequacy. And what does that mean? That means if the state determines that your budget should be $10 and you spend $9, you are under adequacy. And if your state determines that you spend $11, then you're over, and you have to explain what that additional dollar was being spent on. Typically, districts will say that's being spent on your music, your arts, your extracurriculars. So with that, and with the formula change from last year to this year, and doing a 3-year average versus that 1-year look back, it was determined that we are under adequacy. That we, in our first year ever, going into 25-26, spent under what they consider our local fair share to be. So what is local fair share? Local fair share has 2 important indicators. The first one is property value, and the second one is district income. Now, for property value, Monmouth County decided to be part of a pilot program in 2013 where they reassess your property every single year. And with that, it increases your property value, which increases the ability for what the state determines can be your local fair share. The other component to this is district income. They are actually taking what each of your households make, determining what that is for a town amount, and then doing the same thing on an average look back over those 3 years and giving it an average. And those 2 indicators together create local fair share. So they determine that your local fair share, you can pay more, but the district budget for your local taxes is only a base number that can go up 2%. So the state determined this year that they're going to allow, for the first time ever, a tax incentive program.
Just one point on this case before you move on. I just want to repeat what you just said in my own thoughts. So the state, the town reassesses our properties to be what they feel they're worth. And then what they're saying is that we should be taxed on the worth of the house. And if we're not, then the homeowners need to make up that difference. So they feel that we're not paying enough taxes because our homes are here, but our taxes are here. Am I getting that right?
The state
Right,
says that.
right. So they're assuming if our homes are going up in value, we're making more money.
And your district income.
And your district, right, and therefore you should be paying more in tax, so.
That your town has the ability to
Ability.
pay more in taxes.
So when they say we're under adequate, the state is saying that we are not being paid what we should be paid, but they're not going to give us the money they want the taxpayers to do.
Correct. They're saying that the local towns can pay for more themselves. And
Right.
now, with this tax incentive program, they're giving you the ability to do so.
Right.
Because before, there was no mechanism for you to increase it.
Right, so the incentive on their end is that they raise the taxes and they're going to give us a tiny little bonus.
Right, so currently, the way the tax incentive program is set up, they would give you 5% for every dollar you increased a tax levy. Or, how they explained it, for every $1 million, they'll give you 50,000.
This is the tax incentive program. It's important to notice, is not, has to be approved at the budget hearing in Trenton. We have asked if the school districts who are eligible, which 20 districts are eligible in the county. Most of our neighboring towns are eligible. They have asked that we complete, if we're going to move forward, that they ask that we complete an application and have it submitted by April 14th.
What about the counties, I don't know if you know, the ones that don't have that? Are they also, will they file for this taxes? Is it non-county really hurt?
In the state of New Jersey, there are 300 districts that are eligible. So that's 50% of school districts in the state of New Jersey are eligible to participate or apply for the tax incentive program. Yeah, so it's 300 districts that are affected. The schools get 5%.
Comes out of, it'll come out of tax, a tax levy increase. So for every dollar you increase, for every dollar you increase in the local town tax, they'll give you 5 cents.
It's not that like, if the district raised $1,000 extra from the community, that the district would only be able to spend in our district 5% of that. Is what is it, $5, $50, whatever, I'm sorry, bad math. It's that we actually would be raising all of the taxes here that would go all into the school budget, and then in addition, the state would give a little bit more money, 5%.
So for each million,
I'm
so if it's a
not
million,
saying I'm in favor, I'm just saying that's what.
this is just, and this is information.
5% of a dollar, $30. There's no 95%.
So we can get to the questions and then, so just jot it down. So we have the visuals, so then this way it kind of gets you thinking in terms of then asking those questions.
So for the tax incentive program itself, the way it works is that, again, for every million, the state will match 5%. So how are we eligible? We're eligible because this is, again, the first year ever that the state is determining that we are below adequacy. and that our state tax levy falls below what they deem to be our local fair share. So if we didn't have those two components together, we would not qualify. And in order for us to even qualify for this program, we also have to exhaust all of our eligible adjustments. And so what do we mean by that? We mean we have to take our 2%, plus we have to take if there are any cap allowances. Currently, what we've had to use in the last few years is the healthcare adjustment waiver. So we would be using our healthcare adjustment waiver. In a prior year, honestly 2 years ago, in 23, 24, we were creating that budget, and we had a huge impact to Chapter 44. We had a health waiver adjustment of about $1.2 million. We did not use all of that, so that is what they consider going into banked cap. Banked cap gives you the ability to then use that leftover money for the next 3 years. So as we were creating this year's budget and knowing that we had challenges, some of those challenges that we were facing, it wasn't only just the healthcare waiver, but also utilities. Utilities, gas is going up 17%, electric is going up 22 to 26%. And that is impacting us significantly because we have over about 625,000 square feet that we need to heat and cool. And it is impacting us quite significantly. And the reason why...
Ms. Case, I'm sorry, can you do the kilowatt?
So in July of every year for utilities, they go out for an auction. That auction was like $22 or $28, I'm not remembering the exact amount, but it actually increased to over $270 a kilowatt. And so why did that happen? Because two plants closed, and we are not creating enough energy in order to supply all of the electric that we need as a state, not us, as a state. And so they are considering reopening 3 Mile so that they can help it. They were also anticipating that solar would take off higher and it would actually create more energy generation. It did not. We do go out for bid every single year for our energy consumption, and we will continue to do so. But that's not only going to impact us here, it's going to impact us everywhere. And we've already started to see some of that impact happen through vendors. We're receiving notifications from vendors that our cost for supplies are going to increase 3 to 7%, and that they can't project what that cost will be yet either due to potential tariffs. And they're writing that in letters to us, letting us know that these are things that we need as consumables in the district to run our programs, yet they're going to double and triple the cost that we used to pay. Did I cover it?
This is the chart we shared, I think it was 2 weeks ago, in terms of what the tax levy or the tax incentive program would look like. The minimum amount that you can apply for is $1 million. The state would then contribute $50,000 for $1 million. And the district is eligible for $5,873,000. The state, let's just say, free let's raise taxes, which we're not, then the state would contribute almost $300,000. We're not here to say we agree or disagree with the program. I think in my town, a similar situation. I have to say though, I haven't received any information from my school district, so I'm learning a lot more. I'm learning more here, doing the work here, as opposed to what our superintendent is providing us. So I feel you, I empathize, so it's not about necessarily going into it, making recommendations to the board without, understanding what we're asking for or what the options are in terms of providing additional funding to the schools.
Ms. Price, I just wanted to know, what you touched upon, it's very important. Our sisters districts are also looking into and were applying for this. But a lot of them do not have the community feedback behind it, so I want to give you guys credit for coming out and allowing us to talk to the community first. So that's much appreciated, the transparency.
So in terms of the tax incentive program,
I think, the board has asked, well, what happens, where does the money go? So, or what can we use it for? A few slides before, we said that the budget is created in order to provide a thorough and efficient education. This tax incentive program, the money is utilized for providing a thorough and efficient education. So if you look back and we connected, the team has been in terms of making sure and ensuring that it's aligned to curriculum, to strategic plan and our school and district goals. So the areas that would be impacted and where money would be utilized is curriculum and instruction. So maximizing professional development, instructional material, curriculum material for the classroom. Special education would be utilized to enhance, provide programming, offset some of the costs with the out-of-district, as in this case already mentioned, that we already anticipate a decrease in IDPA. All of that money is utilized to cover for out-of-district. However, it still doesn't even, I feel doesn't even put a dent when we spend $3.5 million on out-of-district. Intervention supports, improve and provide targeted assistance to not only our struggling students, but also closing achievement gaps and enrichment programs are on here. Mental health services. For the last 5 years, we work with Effective School Solutions, who provide intensive therapeutic services to at-risk students. That has decreased a cost of placing students out of district, gen ed or special ed, at least $3.5 million by having the one contract and agreement that we have with them to provide those services for our kids. So those are the types of programs, and enhancing and providing a little more for those students. Student support services, essentially providing supports to our families, family engagement, and community partnerships with the students and families. So
Ms. President, I know you said special education, students, populations increase. What are we seeing in terms of mental health services for students?
It's a struggle for kids. It's a struggle. In terms of, we worked really hard in terms of this budget year, in terms of looking for even other vendors and contractors for those services that we're providing currently. Because of the cost, because we knew we needed to really make some difficult decisions in terms of where money was being spent before this tax incentive program came out. So we worked with different vendors because we were asking that to increase services for those particular kids. Because we're no longer seeing it spent, years ago it used to be more of our special ed population that was having difficulty with self-regulation. We're not seeing that anymore. It's across the board from elementary all the way on up to high school. So I'm very, very proud that the team worked with our contracted providers to be able to increase those services for not only our at-risk, but also training for or working with students that are at the younger level, perhaps. Mental health also includes the state. We are required to do risk assessments. That is a mandate. That is not funded. So all of your school counselors, your social workers, your school psychologists, if a child is in need, safety is number one. They are to stop what they're doing. They are conducting risk assessments, which the team across in every building is excellent in doing that, but that is not funded. That is not funded. So sometimes we need to pay staff in terms of work that's missed, and they need to complete their regular day-to-day operations or their day-to-day work. Sometimes we have to reimburse us that. That's a cost to the district. Savings?
Ms. Burrell?
Yes.
Can you explain what a risk assessment is for people?
So the risk assessment is any student that says that he is going to harm himself or others. So and it starts, like I said, in elementary. We were not seeing that years ago. It was particularly targeted to students that were struggling in middle school and high school. It's at the elementary level, which again we do a lot of prevention work. I would say I always wanted to do that. The teams always wanted to do more, but there's only so much we can do. We worked really hard on that contract. We were able to save for our upcoming school year $180,000 by saying the predicament that we're in, we're receiving a reduction in aid, et cetera, and we negotiated. Those are things that we didn't have to do years ago because we were being fairly funded, and there weren't these increasing costs. So, so I was proud that we got it down to $180,000. They will be using our district to market though. So tomorrow I'm doing something with the company. So we are, and that's all free, but we're doing it because we want to decrease the cost for the schools. So other areas, and this case touched upon the revenue generated that we are bringing in. We are really, really creative. Like I just said, I will work for free for a company and do a chat or a podcast, whatever they need to do their help with their marketing. We do that to help bring down the costs. In addition to that, Ms. Case mentioned the facilities usage, how we changed the policy, the board changed the policy in terms of bringing in revenue that way. For example, the YMCA, our before and after care, for years, they were not paying the facility, they were not contributing to facilities use. We are now seeing that. Preschool expansion aid, we're very creative. We're not doing any, we're adhering to regulations in terms of how to utilize the funding from preschool expansion aid. While we receive that money, and it's a lot of money, it's over $7.8 million. We're serving 440 students. 440 students. Out of that funding, though, what we utilize in funding is to offset salaries and benefits, meaning that if there's preschool going on at Cliffwood Elementary, we offset salaries for the administrator, the nurse, the school counselor. Strathmore, for years, and Ravine Drive were sharing their school counselor. With preschool expansion aid, we were able to provide a counselor for each and every elementary program. We were not able to do that without the preschool expansion aid. So we utilize, in terms of funding, custodial services, teacher salaries, instructional assistants, everything is included in the funding for the school expansion. Tuition in, so we have our REACH program, 18 to 21. I'm just using them as that program as an example. We have 3 students that are from another district that they are paying our district to be able to attend our REACH program. So that helps offset the salaries for the benefits for teaching staff, and they're also, the kids are also able to socialize and be part of, meet new kids too, so which is really nice. In addition to that, we have a transportation jointure, which just simply means that we are working with other districts to cover, say, some transportation routes, whether they're to out of district, they may be a vocational school, so we're able to share that cost. Shared services, our revenue is about a little over $400,000 for shared services and with other districts. And then most recently on our board agenda, we now will be doing advertising sponsorships, so which will also be projected some revenue for that as well. So basically with shared services, we work with, I'll give an example, Belmont. We work with their school district, one of our instructional master, the master teacher for preschool. We share her 1 day a week, and we're able to generate, say, $30,000. They pay us. So while it's not impacting her work, she's still able to complete the 4 days in district, which she needs to do. That 1 day helps with revenue for $30,000. Another shared services, we have an agreement with Kingsburg as well as with Shrewsbury. And we share payroll, business, office, technology.
So we just wanted to let you know there are some tax assistance programs. One of them is there's a senior freeze. I believe Aberdeen is doing a workshop on this on May 8th from 2:30 to 4:30. And just to explain what that is. And then the IRS will from time to time send us some notices, and they are allowing, if you do an electronic filing, for it to be free this year. I just wanted to let you know some of the things that were out there. They'll also be talking, I believe, about the anchor program as well, and state New Jersey, so that there are some tax rebate benefits what's next for us? We did approve our tentative budget on March 20th, and so then it was able to be submitted to the county office on March 21st. This did not include any tax incentive initiative. It came out after the fact. So the reason why we have an April 10th board meeting, and then where we will have a board resolution on this tax incentive program. And the reason why we need to do that is because the state requires us to have the application due to them if we are going to participate no later than April 14th. With that being said, then we would change our tentative to our approved budget, and we would potentially have our public hearing on April 24th. Some of the things that could change the April 24th deadline is the state has to have it back to us within 4 days before so that we can advertise in the paper. That is an election calendar ruling. So in order for us to even have a public hearing, we have to ensure that it was advertised 4 days prior to when our public hearing takes place. The election calendar also dictates the dates we are allowed to have our public hearing, and that would be between April 24th and May 7th.
I have a question. So with all of those challenges, you said the budget was submitted, so what didn't make it onto the budget and what did make it onto the budget?
So I mentioned contracted services, right? So I spoke about the mental health piece, how we decreased that cost by $180,000. We also decreased it, so we not only do we have Madeline Aberdeen staff members, we also contract out services for some specialists. So for example, speech language therapy, occupational therapists, some counselors, all of those contracted services, it's usually aligned to students' IEPs. So we were able to decrease that cost, and we, in terms of, and you mentioned, like, is it easy, or does it do you save money with hiring your own as opposed to contracting? So in this particular scenario, we were able to do a cost analysis, so we will hire some part-time individuals, and that will bring down the cost of contracted services. So we saw some, I'm going to say revenue, but we saw where we could align some funds there.
I just wanted to ask, there was a lot of questions online, people were asking, so we jotted down a bunch of them. So moving forward, I know there was, the demographer said, where do they foresee our district to be in enrollment in the next year? If I think I'm right in saying, you had said closer to 5,000?
Yes.
So we're at 4,000 right now. Okay, so people had asked about if this money would be able to pay for transportation, more busing, subscription busing. I know a lot of people have been asking about that. So I just wanted you guys to talk to that, because if we did want to bring back that, what would we be doing then to possibly bus these extra 1,000 children moving in the next year?
I would predict that you have to cut somewhere else, because if you're going to have an increase in enrollment, you have to anticipate that you're going to have an increase with transportation costs.
Thank you. So, Ms. Perez, I know the public hearing is on April 24th, but just so the public's aware, currently, we have a fiscally sound budget for 25-26. I know you'll get into the details at the 24th meeting, but we are balanced. There are concerns that I think we should be transparent about in terms of moving forward with these increasing costs. What that could potentially mean is at risk in the future. And that this is really, even if this is just going to be voted on correct.
Right. So what we're looking at, right, is a Band-Aid. We're on a boat, the boat has a hole, we're trying to put a Band-Aid over it, we're trying to bail water out as quickly as possible. We've been doing this for this 2% cap for over 10 years, with our consumer price index in New Jersey being well over 2%. And And so we're really starting to feel the effects. We hear it often about our facilities, and we hear you and we see it too, and it's a huge challenge. We want to do more every single day, but then it was at the cost of, staffing or student needs, and so we had to really over that. And then the issue too, just going back to transportation for a minute, is over 5 years ago, we transported, 800 students less than we do now. And so right now, we're transporting over 2,100 students, whether that's in our district or outside of our district. We do, obviously, what we talked about, our special ed has to go through out-of-district placement. They would need to be transported there. We've seen definitely an increase throughout the state in homeless and having to ensure that we transport that. And then one of the other significant costs is that we are required to transport non-public students. If we cannot do so, then we are required to pay aid in lieu. That aid in lieu amount is set by the state. So if we don't have a route to put them on, then we have to pay the parent back per child.
Is it your assessment that the municipalities' use of the pilot program with developers negatively impacts our budgeting process here?
We are looking into that and researching in terms of what maybe could have been done in terms of getting more money, getting some money and some relief from the housing. So we still have to be connected and communicate with the board and also with clients. But it definitely, the housing has impacted. I don't know if that answers.
I know you touched on that the preschool programs bring in a lot of revenue. I can only speak to Ravine Drive. It also has taken up a lot of space at Ravine Drive. And unfortunately, I don't know, any of us are coming in the schools every day. It has detracted from like some of the older kids' education experience in ways of like such like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. They're now, like, I guess before the preschool came in, they would have more classrooms where they'd have a designated art classroom and a designated science classroom and a designated whatever the other extracurriculars are, right? Help. When we go to parent-teacher night, we're often talking to those extracurricular people saying, okay, why aren't there more activities? Like when you're learning about germs, why aren't there more like petri dish, pepper in the petri dish type of things? And all of them say because they don't have a designated classroom, they can't cart around all these experiences to incorporate in their learning. And you're talking about like kindergartners, first grade, second grade, they need these hands-on learning experiences. They can't just be listening to a teacher drone on in lecture format. And I think that's where you get a lot of the distractibility. And they have very limited outside time. And you're talking for like several hours a day. They might be outside for like a 10-minute recess. By the time they leave the classroom and get outside, there's just not enough like movement for them. And so I don't know if we're looking at like expanding these programs are great, but are we looking at what it's taking away from the education experience in like combining classrooms and these teachers not being able to like teach to their full ability? Do you guys look at those things? And how do you navigate them? I mean, if short of expanding Ravine Drive in classroom size, what's the end goal?
So we do, and then a lot of that comes through their grade level meetings, curriculum meetings, and I appreciate your feedback. Here, so we can address those concerns. We sometimes don't hear from our teaching staff that how they're burdened with it, whether they shy away from informing, they shy away from telling us how that. But I appreciate your feedback, and I'll definitely. Yeah. So there will not. This was probably our last year in terms of expanding anymore. When we talk about preschool expansion aid, the state determines the number of students that we will be able to serve. So according to their population, we are able to serve 500 preschool age students 3 and 4 years old. We will not be able to meet that, they call it the universe. We will not meet that universe because of space. So we're not going to be taking any additional classrooms or anything like that. So we're now, we're at 90% of meeting. They look at the percentage, we're at 90% of meeting our universe. This DOE will come back. She's due to come back in June, where she walks around the buildings and things like that in terms of specials and things. So should we get feedback from her? But she's also questioning why we're not at 100%. You say because there isn't.
You said there's 120 children coming from the glassworks. Now, I'm not sure with the pilot program, with all these houses that are being built there, why isn't there the tax dollars to cover all of that? And if it's not, if they're not collecting those taxes, then why isn't Aberdeen picking up that? Because they have the property, they put all these houses there, they brought all these children in, why are not, they do not get the burden, and why is it falling on us?
I can't answer that, but we can definitely work it. You see contracts up here.
Council, here? Okay, thank you.
Can you explain what a pilot program is? Can you just touch on
We're not the experts in it.
We're not experts in the pilot program, so I don't want to speak to something and give you improper information, but we'll definitely take the feedback and look more into it.
We're not bringing housing, we're not bringing children, we're bringing all the housing, there should be the dollars to fund all the things that we need from children.
I could just quickly answer. I'm Diana Bell, I'm on the board, but I also used to work for municipal government. So in New Jersey, payment in lieu of tax agreements do not have to include school districts by law. So that's not the school district's decision by any stretch. I understand the concern. I used to work in New York. In New York, the school district had to be involved, so it's very different here.
I mentioned that there's 760 special ed students in FY25. I was just curious, how much do we spend per special ed student? And how does that compare to last year? What we're expecting to spend for next year?
So cost per student would range because depending on program and depending if they're in district. So we have a variety of programs ranging from where a student may be identified and have an IEP in a general education setting. In-class support, some students receive full-out resource. That's with a specific teacher.
So if you have a total number of dollars that you spend for special ed, divided by the 760 students, is that down?
It's going up. It's definitely going up. And that's because, well, we have more students. We are creating more programs. So for next year, we're projected to add 3 additional special ed classrooms, self-contained, for autism and multiple disabled. So that's just to, we have to be compliant in terms of adhering to their IEPs. So the cost of that will go up. For added district, that calculation, why we keep talking about it, is because that cost could be anywhere from $120,000 to $300,000 for one student. And there's no cap. So because when we look at out-of-district placements, it's not only just their education in terms of where they're going to school, we're paying them, say, $90,000. They may require a nurse. That's an additional $120,000. Tack on any additional services that we have to pay the school, it can calculate to almost $300,000 in transportation. So each year, in May, and we're preparing for this now, is we are able to apply for extraordinary need. Each year, last year, we submitted over $7 million worth of reimbursements. We did not get $7 million. We got 1.4.
I have 2 questions. So when you mentioned earlier about the contracting of the special education therapists and that you were going to hire them, you mentioned something about part-time hiring. So are you saying that you're going to hire some part-time folks from the contractors to work in the school district in addition to the therapists that are already in the school district, or are you cutting their hours to part-time? That was my first question.
So we're hiring. But we are projecting, recommending to hire part-time staff under the Maria contract, our teacher contract, And then in addition to that, we still will have contracted services, but we're decreased in the contracted services. So for example, because numbers, students who require, who receive speech language services, it may not, the staff number, we may be contracting that staff member out. Elementary, maybe that you'll see the part-time specialist there.
Okay, and then my other question was just with regards to special education classes, like I have a child in MD, so they do get, the specials where they get switch classes like art, music, library, computers. But I have been hearing in the last few weeks, just being a liaison at Strathmore for parents, that they're not always necessarily getting their specials because there's a shortage of staff and things are happening. But what is frustrating as a parent is that nobody's really communicating that to us personally on a whole. Like, we hear about it through the grapevine because maybe somebody at the school mentions it, or maybe a parent overheard something, or maybe, a parent works in the school and so they hear things. So it's just frustrating because it's like, so they're missing out on these things because of what's happening. So for 2025, 2026, what is their plan for what you're going to do about that? Not you necessarily, but the school district. That's my second question.
So unfortunately, there's an absolute shortage of teachers. They graduated last year in the state of New Jersey, maybe 7 students from TCNJ, which was one of the top schools for education. It's happening nationwide. So we advertise, we recruit, we're posting on social media, et cetera, and we want subs to apply, for ESS. It's not only just the teaching staff, but the substitutes. However, full transparency, sometimes the company will send people that we don't want.
When you say the company, do you mean that you have
ESS.
a... Oh, ESS, okay.
Yeah. So meaning that they're not qualified to be your
Okay.
employees.
Just out of any, I know that you have the ESS, but did the school district ever think about not just utilizing them, but also like you guys have an HR department too? Like I worked in HR and benefits in my past history, and we used to go out to the schools and recruit these people. Like I used to recruit nursing for healthcare. I'd go there, they'd have a job fair, we'd meet them, because sometimes going through your contractor doesn't always mean you're going to get the best candidates. Sometimes they're just pushing people through because, you're paying them to give you people, but they're not really looking at everything. They're just like, oh, they graduated, okay. And like you said, they're not sending you what you need. They're just sending you just because. So you're kind of wasting money that way too, because you're not getting what you need. And then our kids are not getting what they need. That was my last question.
So I wasn't here, but years ago they did have, it wasn't contracted out. A lot of districts, unfortunately, in the state of New Jersey did move to utilizing a contracted service. We can look into it and see, and maybe pilot, maybe with one building, and what it would look like. I'd have to, talk to the team and see what it would look like now. Yes. So we used to, in my prior district, we had one person, then she'd go down the list, and she had like 10 people, and she, we would call all 10 people, can you come in today? And it was easy to do. I guess it's just shifted where there's not enough people to do it. It's also the issue. But we're open to being creative and kind of trying something new, because we do know that it is a concern for all of us. It's a concern for you, it's a concern for us. More importantly, it's a concern for our kids, because they are missing more valuable curricular activities.
Hi, you said that we're going to have an extra 1,000 students or so. How are we going to house them? Like, is this going to I don't think there's going to be
It's not next year. Not next year, but it's projected. So the demography, 29, 30, it's like the next 5 years.
Right, so, the next 5 years, I thought the next year.
Oh my God, I would die.
Okay, that's what I thought you said.
No, I'm sorry, no, clarification. And we're happy to have this study and share the information out to our public session. We'll make sure that we do a great job with sharing when that will be presented. But the 1,000 students that there is projected, it's over by 2030. So we looked at over 2030 and then even beyond that.
Are there any plans on expanding like buildings?
I would love to. I don't know where to build, but
Classrooms.
Where are they coming from? If
they're coming from the developers that have pilot programs, not go after these towns and tell them you can't afford pilot programs.
So, I think it's both. I think it's both because, and I don't quote the numbers, but there were 1,200 units, or 1,200 new housing that was built up to the thing today. They're projecting another, say, 700. So, not only the building, my assessment is to just me as the superintendent, what I see happening in the community is that you also have a high turnover with people who are moving in. So our seniors are leaving. We don't want them to leave, right? We still want them to be part of the community, but our seniors are leaving, and then you're having new families move in that are young, love them, young with kids, or they're going to have kids. So in the demography study, what it's going to show is the age group who, like, if they're using the census data, they're going to look at that and they're going to share, okay, if there's an age group, say, a certain percentage from 19 to 20 or 35, childbearing, they're projecting even some births, in the community as well. So it's really telling, but I agree. And we would like to work with the towns to kind of share that. And I started to research that, and I shared that with the board as far as with what we can do, especially with the future.
My other question was, the money that we would raise for this tax, all of the money goes into the school district? Like every penny that gets raised in this tax levy? goes
Through the
into
tax levy incentive, this is only for schools, and so it will go directly to the school.
Okay, and then also, are we allowed to use it to help with the busing? Maybe a portion of it, is that allowed? Or is there like special, like, it can only be used for this? And
It has to be used for a thorough and efficient education.
So transportation is not, is that?
As long as it meets the specifications of what we currently provide.
Are we able to do that?
So
Word
what else?
wise?
If the board, if we're going to go for the tax incentive program, we want, as a team, with the board, we want to make sure whatever the money is being used for, it is sustainable. What you don't want is to now do this, and we're okay for the next 2 years, and then you're taking it away. And I say that to be fully transparent, because some parents have asked, in terms of feedback that I received from the board about staffing, certain positions and things like that. If we can add things to extracurricular. We need to make sound decisions where it's sustainable. Because if you're in a position in the next few years where you see a decrease in state aid and a decrease in federal grants, we're in trouble. We're going to be in trouble.
Just put on one state levy, so we get those additional dollars from the state levy, it's supposed to go for operations and academics. But we've got to free up additional funding from property tax dollars for use back towards transportation. So it's an
Yes.
increase to your funding list.
Board of-
Yes, it would be an increase for operational.
And the other, what we also want to make sure before we close out is that with the tax incentive program, if we do submit the application, that we will be meeting with the finance committee. The board has a finance committee in terms of, so that this way everyone knows where dollars are being spent. So if you received an additional $1 million, where are we spending it and what changes did we make? We want to announce that, celebrate that, because it is your.
They say it's a one-time increase, that so next year that money goes away, and our taxes go down.
It would be in perpetuity. So it would increase your tax base forever. And the state, as far as we know, they're only making a pot of money for the 1 year, and we would only receive that one time.
We're going for the highest.
Well, that's
Well,
not right.
it's not.
We have it planned.
We still have to discuss that with the board in terms of the amendment. Yes, and so it would be on the board agenda April 10th, recommendation, and then shortly after that, then we'll share that information out with the community. We're going to take one more question.
Really?
So,
So first I want to say
next meeting, because there are other districts across the state that are facing the same thing, and they are not being as transparent as you guys are. So first and foremost, thank you for this. And I know it's a hard thing to address. You probably expect a little bit of a witch hunt tonight. I completely understand that you guys have increasing costs, right? We all, between state increases, we have no idea what's going to happen at the federal level over the next year. BPU, I mean, it's just every time we turn around, somebody has a handout. So now we get this letter, and here's the school district, the red letter, red, like, we need 6 million so we can get 300,000. I mean, it's kind of like you're tripping over a dollar, pick up a penny here, it doesn't make sense, the math don't matter. That being said, you're gonna submit this budget, let's say it gets approved for the million, right? You're gonna submit this budget now, April 24th. It then has to go to the state, and the state can still say yes or no in June if they're gonna give you that additional funding. Right, no, in addition to.
You are correct. This has happened before, where the state has actually decreased our state aid come
Right.
June or July.
Right.
And then we have to show what, what we would be deducting from our local budget.
Right, so my concern is, you're gonna do all this, right, freak everybody out, and the state's gonna be like, psych, you know, and I get it, you know, like, it's just, the state is the state. I mean, we've lived here long enough, we all know how this game works, and more than likely, you're gonna get less or whatever it's gonna be. So that is a little concerning. My second question is, I understand that there is a fine line between local politics and the school board, but at some point, and I've been to many, many board meetings now for the town, I haven't seen anybody here going to the town and saying, hey, guys, you're making all these decisions, and I understand that our budgets are different, but something's got to give here. We got to start getting to the table and having a conversation. Because what the town doing is, what they're doing is criminal. It's criminal, and I don't see any board members here. You know, you guys got to go to those meetings too. Something has to happen.
We have,
Yes, so,
Can you explain that?
2 years ago, we did start having monthly meetings with them, and then quarterly meetings with both towns. And then the other thing that the board started is they have a liaison for a town, so that they can make connections both ways.
Gotcha. And then one question, shared services. Keyport put out the same letter pretty much verbatim that you guys did, like, it was insane. Is there any opportunity to continue to look at more shared services across districts?
We do. So we have meetings, whether that's for transportation, special ed, business, curriculum and instruction, so that we all know what each other is doing, so that if there is a program or there is a way, I mean, down to, let me tell you, for the Bayshore area, we let Hazlet do it, but we went out for a garbage contract so that we can reduce the cost for just picking up basic things. And so we'll continue to do that, and we continue to assess every contract. We continue to assess every single subscription that's utilized by students. So we're changing that yearly based off of what the district needs and what we're seeing. And we're also getting that from, teacher feedback and administrative feedback, so that we're making those decisions, so that, maybe last year we needed a district subscription, but this year we only need a K-2. We're making those changes so that we can use those savings to offset and pay for something else.
Two other key things. One, that letter to the board was them letting them know they already voted on it. They already, that was just a, hey, we're doing this. Not like having a conversation with the community and letting them know what's going on. That was them letting them know, oh, by the way, here you go. And the other thing, so you know too, while you see me, when I can get to the town, I'm not tied up at work, I'm the town liaison with Joe Montucci. So we've been having those conversations.
Yes, and I'm the town liaison for Madeline. So we've also been, we were in communication before the letter went out to the community, just letting them know that we want to make sure that, we know taxes are going to be raised there as well.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure it's all, balanced, so we're not hitting the community all at once. So we have had that conversation, we're having those conversations, how it's impacting us, one town maybe a little more than the other, but, we are openly talking to them at least once a week. And that just recently started a few months ago.
I did just want to bring up again, and I'm far from a lawyer and or this administration, but basically the pilot program means that we're not receiving any money to pay for the children that we're educating. So Glassworks was a pilot program, and we're not receiving tax to cover the kids that we're educating. So that comes out of everybody's pockets. So yes, pilots are mandated in New Jersey, I understand, but the problem lies is that when they do pilot programs, sometimes the towns will work with the district and give them a percentage to cover what they're going to have to spend. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. So that really does affect, and I know our administration has been looking into that on the legal and what we can and cannot do for that. So thank you, for bringing that up.
And I just want to comment that
Private program, and we're just trying to work. Should there be an expiration?
It's not the same, it's a payment in lieu of tax, P-I-L-O-T, payment in lieu of tax. That's the pilot, not like what you're thinking, I know what you mean, like a what-if trial type thing. No, this is a 30-year pilot.
So that's what it is.
30 years.
So I think the challenge for us, like, and I'll speak for myself, it's second year as superintendent, so we weren't, I don't know the history in terms of when the planning was taking place for when the building was happening. I know when I started 10 years ago, that the demographer was here, and I believe that board at that time thought that there was another building that was being built, and they thought that that would impact enrollment. At that time, the demographer said no, right? Yeah. So remember, right? So they said it wasn't going to impact enrollment. Now we're seeing with the most recent development that it is. So when I say, I mean, I'd like to speak to legal on to the towns to see if there's anything we can do. I'm kind of backtracking, backpedaling a little bit because there are things already in motion. So I just wanted to say that as well. Yes.
So, my name is Mark Bishop, and I live here in Aberdeen. My wife, our 2.5-year-old son, and now our 2.5-week-old Luke. And both of my children will be going through the school system, and I want nothing more for them and every child in this district to have access to an exceptional education. First, I want to start by thanking the board for even holding this forum. I understand that giving residents a seat at the table for a conversation like this is not required, and it's not very common. And I genuinely appreciate that you've chosen to engage the community before making such a major decision. And I think that this is what public accountability and transparency should look like. Now, to be clear, I'm not here because I oppose funding our schools. It's quite the opposite. I want more investment in our schools, and that's exactly why I've been so critical of the way that we've structured our local development. We have multi-million-dollar properties in town, such as the Forge at Glassworks, which just sold for $57 million, and they are paying zero school taxes because of pilot agreements that was approved by the Township Council, which this board had no say in, which is astonishing. That one development alone would have generated $800,000 this year for our schools had it been taxed properly, like the rest of us all. But it's not. And our families are being asked to make up that difference. And that's only one of many such problems in town. And that's on Aberdeen's side. There's even more I haven't looked into in that one. So I understand that that's the environment that we're in. So yes, I support public education, but asking the community to take on a nearly 10% effective tax increase without a clear breakdown of where the money would go, that's not responsible. That's asked for blind trust, and I can't agree to that. This district already submitted a balanced 2025 budget within their cap without cutting programs or salaries. This extra $5.8 million is not part of that budget. It came after the fact through the state's tax levy cap adjustment for under adequacy districts. And it is optional. So I only have one simple request. Show us the itemization. Just because we can raise the money does not mean that we should. And if we're going to consider it, then we need to do so carefully, because the increase that we're talking about will likely cause some residents to lose their lives. Here's a solution that I'm proposing to the board tonight. Answer these questions for us first. Where is this money going to go? We need an itemized plan for each funding level that's being considered. $1 million, $3 million, and the $5.8 million. So where every dollar can go. Show us why we need it. Every line item, we need need justification. Why do we need it? Why do we need it now? What problem will it be solved? And what's the impact? What measurable benefit will these investments bring to our students, and how will that success be tracked? I think just in doing that, we will find out if we really need this money, and if so, exactly how much. A couple of examples that I came up with. You know, say, line item A, we need $400,000 for a new math curriculum. And then you've seen in neighboring districts that this has resulted in vastly improving test scores of our students. Residents may turn around and say, hey, I think that might be worth investing more of my tax money in. Example two, we need $250,000 to renovate an outdated lobby. I think the residents might say, hey, I don't think that we really need that right now. So that's why we need the itemization. And until that's been done, I don't think that not only are we unprepared to approve this, but we're not even ready to really have a conversation. I just don't think that you did the homework on that yet. If we're going to ask working families, seniors, and young homeowners to stretch even further in this economy, the very least that we can do is show them where every dollar is going to go and why it matters. And I understand, you know, talking about the pilot programs, and I understand that the schools have been kind of shortchanged for a long time. And I understand that this is an easy way to make up for lost revenues that you guys should have been getting for a long time. And what I'm asking you to do is to sit there and look at exactly how much we need. Because if we even have funding options at $1 million, $3 million, $5.8 million, that tells me that we don't know exactly how much they're doing. And that's all that we should be doing. So I would say don't take the easy route. You know, I know you guys work hard already, work a little harder, try and figure this out. And I think that that's the best way to get the community on board and see exactly what we need for it. I don't know if we can accomplish that by the April 14th deadline. What happens if we pass that deadline?
The application, they won't even accept the application.
We gotta get to work. That's all.
Hey, Ken Aiken, been involved in the school district many years. My kids went here. I missed the mural. I don't know what happened to that. I used to really like that, but it's been a while since I've been in here. All I want to do is just tell you how we got here. There was a time, actually, back in around 2011, and before that, that the people of the townships actually got to vote on the school budget. But I think Governor Christie was the guy that was in that, and he made, there was a big incentive to move away from that because budgets used to fail and districts would be guaranteed, you know, up to a 2% increase every year without having to, you know, go out to the public and get the approval. But the dark side of it was that vote passed, like the 7 board members, 2 of us voted against it. And my reason back at the time is when you give up a right to the state, you don't get it back. I don't know if it's possible to do that, but the more important thing about it is it used to put a check on the township because when the budget failed, the Board of Education had to negotiate that budget with the township, and they were the final arbiters as to how much was going to go into it. So now what happened with this, and I knew this day was going to come, all of this building got done, and the township council isn't responsible for any of it. They don't have to take any heat for it. It's put completely on the school district. They have no control over it. So they have no skin in the game now. So it's easy for them to do these projects because they don't have to stand up to the public when the school budget's going to get cut and say, well, we have to negotiate and restore some of this money. So that's kind of how we got here. So the lesson there is when you have a right, don't give it up. Don't give it up for the state because you'll never get it back. Just like income taxes. I think that was supposed to be temporary in New Jersey. It's still here, right? So just remember, anytime like some kind of public body gets its hands on money, they never let it go. But I feel bad for you. I've been up there, and you have a hard decision to make because you have to balance what you got to do for kids. But you know, there's plenty of people in the town that you know they don't have 5% of a year's salary to like weather that. You know, fortunately some people do, but you have to kind of keep that in mind, and you have to balance that with the education of children. I don't know what the answer is to it. This is how we got here, for those of you that don't know that. And this is what it is. Now, hopefully people should take their complaints to Trenton, because the school funding in the state of New Jersey has been a disaster for the last 30 years. And I mean, the righteous thing to do would be to have the money follow the special ed students and follow the students that had free and reduced lunch, so that you don't have districts that are gentrified now that have enormous school budgets and can spend $30,000 and $40,000 a student. And then you have a lot of middle-class districts getting absolutely crushed, by the formula because of the way it is. And until they reform that, nothing is going to change here. But that's it. Thank you.
You guys are projecting a problem that's coming, right? It's here, it's on its way, it's getting worse. Right? What feedback are you getting from the town leadership as to what can be done to help mitigate on their side? Are they engaging with you, saying, well, we have these ideas, maybe we're changing some zoning to incentivize more commercial activity? Right? Are you guys getting any assistance at all or feedback from the town about what can be done about this looming crisis?
We have not had that discussion.
So they really haven't said anything to you at all. If you guys go down to the conference and they say, hey, we're thinking about it, like we're acting.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So, April 10th, that's when the decision's made? April 14th.
April 10th, the board will be
So
taking.
they vote April 10th,
Correct.
and to decide whether to raise the tax or not, that's how that works?
Correct.
Okay. So I have it. Okay.
If there are any other, there's a board meeting on the 10th, which is this week, it's on Thursday, and then the budget hearing is on the 24th. If you'd like to ask any questions or any additional feedback, please use the Google, there's a form under the Board of Education site, and we can receive your feedback from there. A lot of parents have provided feedback already as well, so we're going to hear and listen, and that's what we're here to do. It's not, while we are responsible to create the budget and work with all the staff members and the administrative team and present it to the board, we know it's a community, so we care about it. So I hope you understand that.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. I just wanted to say really quick that we would like to work with the town. We hope we can work with the town. We're trying to make those inroads by having these liaison relationships as best we can. And we're kind of still coming back off of the COVID years, so we're starting to kind of get back to normal with a lot of things, including committees, finance committee, that's new. So I really welcome that. If anybody, I don't know if anybody's here from the town, but we do have our liaisons. They try to keep them updated on what's going on. I know that Ms. Scully has had really good relationships. We just happen to have a cordial relationship, so it's a little easier. I mean, we would like that, is the bottom line. We would really like that.
Is there a way to get more transparency when you have these conversations with the town? Is there a way to communicate that with the public? Hey, we met with the town today and this happened and that happened.
Yeah,
so that-
at the board meetings, we update those liaison conversations, like what the liaison from the board filled in to their town counterpart and vice versa. And they do appreciate, I will say the communication has improved, and they do appreciate, like we shared with them the YMCA program that we have for the summer that's going to supplement the rec programs for Aberdeen and Madawan. They appreciate that because they always run out of space. So now we have an additional option for parents for the summer for K-5. So a lot of things, they've been keeping them informed, and even just simple things like the construction around bus routes and all that stuff, and even things like where we are in the budget process, where they are in the budget process, just trying to keep that line of communication open. That's from the board liaison side, but as they mentioned, they also have conversations with the town managers, police departments, we have a memorandum of agreement with the police department, so I mean, we really are trying to keep those lines of communication open. You know, there's only, it's a two-way street, right, so that's all it says.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy. I go to a lot of these board meetings. A lot of the stuff that they're talking about is not new. They talked about it at the last board meeting, how this was sprung on them. And I have to be honest with you, it's very disappointing to have me and maybe one or two other people at these very important meetings. I go to the council meetings, again, very important meetings that maybe only one or two people go to. So I think that seeing an increase of people who attend these things would be wonderful. The next thing I want to talk about really fast is the budget, right? So I remember last year, you know, we had to let go of a couple of teachers, there was a lot of upset parents, and then I started watching like the news coming in of like the bloodbath that was happening in other districts, like extracurriculars completely cut, letting go of 150 teachers. I know that I'm following the thing in Middletown where they are closing 2 schools, and then council came and rescued them, and now they're not closing anything because the council is giving money to the school district to make the residents happy. I know that in Hometown, they have a pilot program. Everyone loves Bellworks, right? And the council is sharing the payment in lieu of taxes. So basically, Glassworks pays the council money every year. Money that does not go to educating the students of Glassworks. Okay? Everyone's aware of that. Okay. So Homedale is taking that money and sharing it. They get money from Bellworks, and they're taking that money and they're sharing $600,000. It may not sound like a lot, but that's a nice chunk of money with the district. I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to go to the council. There's a lot of building, guys, there's a lot of building coming. There's a huge building going up by the train station. They just approved a bunch of houses over by Bellworks. They just rezoned 4 buildings over by Glassworks. They just rezoned 4 buildings over by Glassworks that they rezoned from commercial over to residential. So, I mean, like, I really think people need to start coming to these meetings because I think this is going to be an ongoing problem for us. And I know my taxes since 2020 has gone from 9,000 to 15,000. I can't be the only one who's experiencing this. So, thank you.
Just a real quick question. The demographer report, will that be given to us before April 10th? Or is that going to be released to the public before April 10th? It's going to be a draft. When is it going to be finalized?
We're expected to meet with them on Wednesday, and then so hopefully that's happening.
Not to be a cynic, right, but 1,000 people over our 3,900 seems like, even if everything got built, is like on the high side, right? I think the bigger concern, and I don't know where to sit on this, right? Like, I came to the meeting with an open mind, because your budget's 95 million, right? If we add even just 1 million, we're talking about like a 1% increase in the school budget. I think like the bigger crisis is you're talking about our school population exploding by 20%, right? Like, that million is going to be a drop in the bucket. You know what I mean? And then, I don't want my taxes increased, right? Like, I'll do whatever I can to fight against my taxes being increased. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're bound by a 2% cap, right? It sounds like the state's only give you 1 bite at the apple. So my concern is how accurate these statistics are from the demographer, especially when they're not going to be released to the public prior to the board making a well-founded, outcome of how they should vote. So that's my bigger concern, that this isn't going to be released to the public, that they're not going to have a final draft before being able to make a decision. Listen, at the end of the day, it's Glassworks, 120 kids.
they can build another 5 classrooms. It's not going to be 1,000 kids. So, and as you said, it went from 4,000 down to 3,900. In 2015, we were at 3,700. We're talking about a 5% increase. Now you're talking, and you haven't given a date range for the 1,000 kids, or you did, it was 20, 30, and 29, so in 5 years. Listen, I'll be the first one to eat my hat if you guys go up 20% in 5 years. I don't think it's happening. Within logic and reason. Buildings just don't talk that way. So that's my only opinion. I don't know where I sit on it. I just think you guys need more money. I don't know if this is the way to do it.
It's not just the new buildings, it's like the old developments, like Stratford. They were built in '62. In the '70s, we had split scheduling because there were too many students. So then in the '90s, we closed a couple of schools but now they're coming back. Those are where the children are coming from. We had fewer schools as well. But I'm just saying, that is where the students are coming from. I see
Listen,
that.
I work in Fort Lee, they're not every house there, they built a triplex, quadplex, and everything. So this isn't a localized problem. This is a New Jersey problem. The population is going to keep listening. In your head, you're going to be like, yeah, the population is going to explode. They're not. Just not at the rate that you expect.
So I think we're going to just take maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we would welcome follow-up feedback, emails, calls, unless you want to say about 8:30. We were supposed to end an hour ago, so I just wanted to have this in the ribbons time. And then also, I want to hear from Ms. Case about other things that could be coming in terms of facilities and bond revenues. Just talk about that.
So we have 2 bonds currently within the district. Those bonds were utilized for past referendums. We will have in 2027, 2028 school year our last payment for one of those bonds. So we've been working with our architect to give us an update on the long-range facilities plan. Currently, we were waiting for the demographer study, which is coming to us much sooner than anticipated. It was supposed to take 12 to 18 months. We're under 12 months. So we're lucky to have that. And then we also want to utilize our architects to assist with the long-range facilities plan that's necessary so that we can really get an idea of what these facilities need. Currently, our roofing that we have, there is not one roof throughout the whole district that still has a warranty. These were built, the warranties were 15 years. Most roofing now has either a 20 or 30 year. We did apply for ROD grants through the state. We were approved, however, we need the money in order to put a new roof on or at least a partial roof replacement. So we hear you. We too pay taxes. We are trying to figure out a solution. We know when it comes to finances, we're always looking for a return on investment. Currently, with where we are, it's really a stopgap measure, whatever we decide, in order so that in future years, we're not changing the landscape of what we become accustomed to in our buildings and with our program. And I know that's really hard to hear, but we know we see the news every single day. We see how revenue streams are changing for every single district throughout the state. And we have been very creative for 10 years, and now we are asking for assistance. So if we did need to, in order for us to then replace our roofing, we do not have the money to do that, so we would have to go out for a referendum. There's 4 times a year that you're able to do so, and there would be many presentations on the cost and why it's necessary, but we do see our facilities aging and what is necessary, and then obviously the demographer study would help us anticipate if we did receive those funds that we would be in order to facilitate. But again, from a capital project perspective, not an operational everyday perspective, and that's the difference of what we're asking for this tax incentive program, is to help our operational day-to-day costs.
talking about again a Band-Aid. Just wanted to reiterate that even this, even if there was any thought of going to the full amount, it's not going to help us fully for anything, so it's still a Band-Aid. Just for let you know, I'm president of the board this year, with Tara, which is the vice president of Martinez. The board has been working really hard. I want to thank them all. They've been really patient, they have a lot of questions, very thorough. I see all the comments. We care, we work really, really hard to look at all these numbers, ask all the questions that you're asking. You live here too, you don't want our taxes to go up. We have kids in the district, we have kids that have gone through the district, are going out. So, and it's important for us to hear from you all, so we appreciate that, but we care. So the comments about the board doesn't care, I take that really personally, because everyone really cares.
And I did want to say something because I got a microphone today, that all of the board meetings are posted on YouTube. So if you want to see what happened and you couldn't make it out, let's say you got little ones at home, they're asleep, that kind of thing, definitely check that out. They're all on YouTube. And our agendas are posted ahead of time, with a ton of information in them, and then they're available afterwards as well. Our minutes are available after as well. And the reason that it's a Google form now for feedback, for those who have in the past emailed us and now they're using a Google form, that's so that it can go straight into our email inboxes. When it was an email, then it had to be filtered, somebody had to read it and then send it. This is just a lot cleaner. So I just wanted to share that. I don't have the official duties aside from being a board member, but I have the microphone, so
Thank you, everyone, and we look forward to continuing the conversation and your feedback.